Part 1. The dust of 10,000 years covered everything in the old building. Krelvoth moved carefully through the dark hallways, his 6 legs making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. He was a scientist from the Zenthari people, and he had spent his whole life digging through the ruins of dead worlds. This planet, the humans had called it Kepler 1442b, was special. The humans had lived here once, a long time ago, before they disappeared from the galaxy. Nobody knew what happened to the humans. They had been everywhere, building cities on hundreds of worlds, flying ships between the stars, making friends and enemies with other species. Then, about 2,000 years ago, they were just gone. All of them. Every human in the galaxy vanished in the same year, leaving behind empty cities and silent machines. Krelvoth had always wanted to know why. What could make an entire species disappear? Where did they go? Were they dead or did they leave for somewhere else? These questions kept him awake at night, made him travel to dangerous places, made him dig through ruins that other scientists were too afraid to explore. Today, he was deep inside what looked like a government building. His scanner told him there was a vault somewhere below, a place where the humans kept their important information. It took him 3 days to find the entrance hidden behind a collapsed wall. It took another 2 days to break through the security doors, which were still working after all these years. When he finally got inside the vault, Krelvoth could not believe what he saw. Rows and rows of storage devices, all still glowing with soft blue light. The humans had built these things to last forever, and they had. His hands shook as he connected his computer to the first device. Most of the information was locked, protected by codes he could not break. But one small file opened easily, almost like it wanted to be found. The file had a name written in human letters. Krelvoth's translator worked on it for a moment, then showed him 2 words in his own language. Final protocol, that was all. Just those 2 words. But something about them made Krelvoth feel cold inside. He tried to open more files, tried to find out what final protocol meant, but everything else was locked tight. He would need help, would need better equipment, would need time. He decided to camp inside the vault and work on the files. His ship could wait. This was too important to rush. For 3 weeks he sat in that underground room, trying different codes, running different programs, slowly breaking through the layers of security that the humans had left behind. And slowly, piece by piece, the file began to open. What he saw made him forget to breathe for a moment. The file was a warning, written in 17 different alien languages. It said the same thing in each language: extreme danger, only to be accessed in case of extinction-level threat. Authorization required from Galactic Council or equivalent authority. Krelvoth sat back and thought hard. Should he stop? Should he call for permission? But who would give him permission? The Galactic Council did not care about dead humans and old mysteries. They had their own problems to worry about, and what problems they were. Just last month, news had come from the Galactic Core. The Devourers had woken up. Everyone knew about the Devourers, the machines that ate whole worlds, that could not be stopped or reasoned with. They had been sleeping for 300 years, quiet and still in the dead zone at the edge of known space. Now they were moving again, and they were hungry. 14 star systems had already fallen. Billions of people were dead or running for their lives. The Council had sent fleets, big ones, with the best ships and the best weapons. Nothing worked. The Devourers just kept coming, kept eating, kept growing stronger. Krelvoth looked at the warning on his screen, then looked at the news reports on his other screen. Could these 2 things be connected? Did the humans know about the Devourers? Is that why they left this warning? He made his decision. He kept working on the file, digging deeper, breaking more codes. If there was even a small chance that this final protocol could help stop the Devourers, he had to know what it was. Days passed. His food ran low. His water recycler started making strange noises. But Krelvoth did not stop. He was close now, so close to understanding. The file was opening layer by layer, showing him pieces of information that did not make sense yet but would. He knew they would. Then, on the 31st day in the vault, something changed. A new section of the file unlocked itself, and Krelvoth found himself looking at a video recording. The image was old and corrupted, flickering with static, but he could see a human face. A woman wearing a military uniform, standing on what looked like a spaceship bridge. She started talking, and Krelvoth's translator worked hard to change her words into something he could understand. Her name was Lisa Grant, and she was a lieutenant commander in something called the Earth Defense Fleet. The date stamp on the video was from 2,247 years ago, just before the humans disappeared. Lisa Grant looked tired, like she had not slept in days. Her voice was quiet but firm as she spoke. "This is my last official log entry. The final protocol has been approved. All fleet commanders have given their consent. All civilian leaders have agreed. Every human in the galaxy has voted yes. We know what this means. We know what we're giving up. But we also know that if we don't do this, everything dies. Not just us, everything." She paused, looking directly at the camera, and Krelvoth felt like she was looking right at him across 2,000 years of time. "To whoever finds this recording, whoever you are, whatever species you belong to, know this. We did not run away. We did not surrender. We made a choice. We paid a price. And we're still out there, still watching, still protecting. You just can't see us anymore." The video ended. Krelvoth sat in the darkness of the vault, his mind racing. What did she mean? What price did they pay? Where were they now? And most important of all, what was the final protocol? He had more questions now than when he started. But he also had proof, real proof that the humans had not just disappeared randomly. They had done something big, something that involved their entire species making the same choice. Krelvoth packed up his equipment. He had to tell someone about this. He had to make the council listen. Because if the humans had found a way to fight something that threatened everything, and if the Devourers were that same threat, then maybe, just maybe, humanity's final protocol could save the galaxy one more time. The council chamber was the biggest room Krelvoth had ever seen. Representatives from 40 different species sat in curved rows that went up and up toward the ceiling. Each one had their own translator, their own computer, their own space designed for their particular body type. The Xanthari section was small, just 5 seats because his people were not important in galactic politics. Krelvoth stood in the center of the room, feeling very small and very nervous. He had requested this emergency session 3 days ago, and he was surprised when they actually gave it to him. Usually it took months to get the council's attention. But the Devourer crisis had everyone scared, and they were willing to listen to any idea. No matter how crazy it sounded, the council leader, a tall being made of living crystal named Shartok, gestured for him to begin. Krelvoth activated his presentation, and holographic images appeared in the air around him, showing the vault, the files, the video of Lisa Grant. He explained everything he had found, trying to keep his voice steady and professional. He told them about the warning labels, about the final protocol, about Lisa Grant's last message. He showed them the data fragments he had recovered, the pieces of information that suggested the humans had fought the Devourers before, a long time ago. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then the questions started, and they were not friendly questions. A representative from the Carthian Empire wanted to know why they should care about ancient human mysteries when real people were dying right now. A delegate from the Morvian cluster said Krelvoth was wasting their time with ghost stories and legends. Others accused him of making things up to get funding for his research. Only one council member seemed interested. Her name was Thel Quinn, and she represented the Etherian Unity. The Etherians were an old species, even older than the humans had been, and they had long memories. When Thel Quinn asked to speak, the room went quiet. Everyone respected the Etherians. Thel Quinn stood up slowly, her silvery skin catching the light. She looked at Krelvoth with eyes that seemed to see right through him. "I believe this researcher may have found something important," she said, her voice like music. "My people have records of the human disappearance. We were there when it happened. We received their final message." The room erupted in noise. Everyone started talking at once, asking questions, demanding to know why the Etherians had kept this secret for so long. Shartok had to call for order 3 times before everyone quieted down. Thelquin continued as if nothing had happened. 2,247 years ago, every human in the galaxy stopped what they were doing at exactly the same moment. They did not explain. They did not say goodbye to their alien friends. They simply went to their ships, their stations, their colony worlds. They gathered together, and then they sent one message to all spacefaring civilizations. She paused, and Krelvoth noticed that her hands were shaking slightly. Whatever she was about to say, it still affected her after all these years. The message said, "Stay away from the Sol system. Forget we existed. Do not look for us. Do not try to contact us. The price we paid cannot be undone, and the burden we carry is ours alone. We are sorry. We are grateful for the time we had. Goodbye." The room was completely silent now. Even the species that did not understand emotions could feel that something serious had happened. After that message, Thelquin went on, every human ship, every human station, every human colony world went dark, not destroyed, just empty, as if every human had simply stopped existing at the same moment. We sent investigation teams to Earth, to Mars, to the major colony worlds. We found cities perfectly preserved, meals left half-eaten on tables, ships floating in space with no one aboard. But no bodies. No signs of struggle. Just absence. She turned to look directly at Krelvoth. The council of that time decided to honor the human request. We sealed off the Sol system. We marked all human worlds as forbidden zones. We agreed to stop talking about them, to let the memory fade. It seemed like the right thing to do, the respectful thing, but now I wonder if we made a mistake. If this final protocol is what I think it is, the humans may have left us a gift and we were too afraid to accept it. The council session ended without any decisions being made. Some representatives wanted to send a fleet to Earth to investigate. Others wanted to forget the whole thing and focus on fighting the Devourers with conventional weapons. A few thought Krelvoth and Thelquin were both crazy and should be ignored. After the session, Thelquin approached Krelvoth in the hallway outside the chamber. She handed him a data chip, looking around to make sure no one was watching them. "These are the Etherian records from that time," she said quietly. "Official records and unofficial ones. Interviews with people who knew humans personally. Sensor logs from the days around the disappearance. Analysis from our best scientists. I am not supposed to share these with anyone, but I think you need to see them." Krelvoth took the chip carefully. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Thelquin smiled sadly. "Because I knew humans once. I had human friends. One of them, a scientist named Dr. Nathan Cross, told me something a few weeks before they all disappeared. He said he was working on a project that scared him, a project that could change everything. He would not tell me what it was, but he said that if it worked, no one would ever have to be afraid of the darkness between stars again. I did not understand what he meant then, but now looking at your evidence, I think I am starting to." She started to walk away, then turned back. "Krelvoth, if you continue this research, you need to be prepared for what you might find. The humans were capable of amazing things, beautiful things, but they were also capable of making terrible sacrifices when they thought it was necessary. The final protocol might be both of those things at once." That night, in his small apartment on the council station, Krelvoth loaded the Etherian data chip into his computer. There were thousands of files, more information than he could read in a month, but one file was marked as priority, and it was addressed to whoever cares enough to look. It was a personal diary belonging to a human woman named Helen Price. She had worked as a civilian coordinator, helping to evacuate non-military personnel from Earth in the final days before the final protocol was activated. Her writing was simple and honest, filled with fear and sadness and a strange kind of hope. One entry, dated 3 days before the disappearance, stood out to Krelvoth. Helen wrote, "We had the final vote today. Every human alive, all 15 billion of us, connected through the quantum network at the same time. The question was simple. Do we accept the final protocol, knowing what it means, what we will lose, what we will become?" The vote had to be unanimous. Everyone had to say yes or it would not work. I was so scared that someone would say no, that we would lose our only chance. But when the count came in, it was 15 billion yes votes. 15 billion people choosing the same thing at the same time, choosing to save a universe that most of us will never see again. I am proud of us. I am so proud of what we are about to do, even though it breaks my heart. Krelvoth read the entry 3 times, trying to understand. What kind of choice required every single person to agree? What could humans do if they all worked together? And what were they saving the universe from? He kept reading through the night, through Helen's descriptions of the final days, through her goodbyes to the world she knew, through her accounts of the preparation ceremonies where humans said farewell to their individual lives. And slowly, piece by piece, he began to understand the shape of what the humans had done, even if he did not yet understand the details. They had not run away. They had not surrendered. They had transformed themselves into something else, something that could fight the kind of enemy that normal weapons could not touch. They had given up being human in the traditional sense to become something new, something that existed for a single purpose. The question was, were they still out there, waiting? And if they were, how could anyone call them back? Krelvoth spent 2 weeks reading through the Etherian files, barely sleeping, barely eating. His colleagues thought he was becoming obsessed, and maybe they were right. But he could not stop. Every file he opened gave him new pieces of the puzzle, new clues about what the humans had done and why. The most detailed information came from Dr. Nathan Cross's research notes. Cross had been a quantum physicist, one of the best in human space, and he had led something called Project Terminus. The Etherians had managed to recover some of his work from an abandoned research station near Jupiter. The notes were highly technical, full of mathematics that Krelvoth barely understood even with his computer's help, but the basic idea was clear enough and it was terrifying. Cross had been trying to find a way to convert human consciousness into quantum information, to turn people's minds into patterns of energy that could exist outside normal space and time. Why would anyone want to do that? The answer was in Cross's personal log, written in the middle of the night when he could not sleep. "We are losing the war," Cross had written. "The Devourers have taken 30 systems this year alone. Our best weapons barely slow them down. They adapt to everything we throw at them. They are not alive in any way we understand, so biological weapons do not work. They are not truly machines, so electromagnetic pulses do not stop them. They exist partially outside our dimension, so they can avoid most of our attacks. We need something completely different, something they cannot predict or adapt to, something impossible." Another entry dated 2 months later. "I think I have found the answer, but the cost is unimaginable. If we convert human consciousness into quantum-locked information, we can exist in the same dimensional space as the Devourers. We can fight them on their own level. But to generate enough power for the conversion, and to maintain the quantum coherence needed to keep our minds stable, every human would have to participate. Not some humans, not most humans, every single one. And once the conversion happens, there is no way back. We would not be dead exactly, but we would not be alive in any normal sense either. We would be something else, something new, possibly something eternal." Krelvoth sat back from his computer screen feeling sick. The humans had turned themselves into living weapons, into beings that could fight enemies from other dimensions. They had sacrificed their physical existence, their individual lives, everything that made them human, to save the galaxy from the Devourers, and it had worked. The Etherians' records showed that the Devourers had disappeared at exactly the same time as the humans. For 2,000 years there had been no sign of either species. Everyone assumed both were extinct, that they had destroyed each other in some final battle. But now the Devourers were back. Did that mean the humans had failed? Or did it mean something else? Krelvoth found part of the answer in a file that Thelquin had marked as extremely important. It was a transmission that the Etherians had intercepted about 6 months after the human disappearance. The transmission had come from empty space, from a region where no ships or stations existed. It was in a human language, but degraded, like the signal had traveled through multiple dimensions before reaching normal space. The message was short. Primary threat neutralized. Devour main swarm destroyed. Dimensional breach sealed. Secondary threats remain dormant. We continue the watch. Do not look for us. We are no longer what we were. So the humans had won their war. They had destroyed the main Devourer force. But some Devourers had survived, gone dormant, waited. And now those survivors were waking up, growing strong again, threatening the galaxy just like they had 2,000 years ago. Did the humans know? Were they still watching? Could they help again? Krelvoth decided he needed to go back to Kepler 442b, back to the vault where he had found the first file. There had to be more information there, more pieces of the puzzle. Maybe even a way to contact the humans to tell them that the Devourers were back and the galaxy needed help. Getting funding for the expedition was surprisingly easy. The Devourer threat was getting worse every day. They had consumed 28 systems now, and they were moving toward the core worlds where most of the Council species lived. Everyone was desperate for any advantage, any weapon, any hope. If Krelvoth thought he could find something useful in the human ruins, the Council was willing to pay for it. Thel Quinn came with him this time, along with a team of Etherian scientists and historians. They traveled in a small fast ship, avoiding the regions where the Devourers were active. The journey took 3 weeks, and every day they received news of more systems falling, more people dying, more fleets being destroyed. When they reached Kepler 442b, everything looked exactly as Krelvoth had left it. The vault was still there, still sealed, still protected by human security systems that had outlasted the civilization that built them. But this time, with Thel Quinn's help and the Etherian computing power, they were able to break through much deeper into the archive. What they found was a complete record of the final protocol activation. Video files, audio recordings, technical data, personal messages. Hundreds of humans had recorded their thoughts and feelings in the final hours before the transformation. Some were scared. Some were excited. Some were sad about what they were losing. But all of them were determined. All of them believed they were doing the right thing. One recording stood out to Krelvoth. It was made by Admiral Jack Hayes, the Supreme Commander of the United Human Fleet. Hayes had been the one to propose the final protocol to the human government. He had been the one to convince 15 billion people to vote yes. In the recording, Hayes sat in what looked like a military office, wearing a uniform covered in medals and rank insignia. He looked old, tired, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "My name is Admiral Jack Hayes," he began. "If you are watching this, it means the Devourers have returned, and someone was smart enough to look for answers in our archives. Good. That means you have a chance. Let me explain what we did and why we did it." Hayes described the war against the Devourers, how humanity had fought for decades, losing ground slowly but steadily. He explained how Dr. Cross had developed the conversion technology, how the human government had debated it for months, how they had finally put it to a vote that every human could participate in. "We knew what we were giving up," Hayes said. "Our bodies, our individual existence, our future as a species in the traditional sense. But we also knew what we were gaining. The ability to fight the Devourers on equal terms. The ability to protect not just ourselves, but every species in the galaxy. The ability to become something greater than we were." Then Hayes leaned forward, looking directly into the camera, and Krelvoth felt once again like a human from the past was staring right at him. "The final protocol has activation conditions," Hayes said carefully. "We built in safeguards because we did not want to force our help on anyone who did not want it. The conditions are these. First, the Devourers must pose an extinction-level threat to sentient life. Second, a non-human species must willingly ask for our help. Third, that request must be made using a specific mathematical sequence that we embedded in our archives." Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing a series of numbers and symbols. "This is the sequence. It is based on quantum harmonics that will resonate across dimensional boundaries. If you broadcast this sequence on all quantum frequencies, we will hear it. We will know that you need us, and we will come back." The recording paused and Hayes's expression grew more serious. "But you need to understand what you are asking for. We are not the humans we used to be. We have spent time in places you cannot imagine, fighting things you cannot see. We have changed. We have adapted. We have become something that might frighten you. When we return, we will not be coming home. We will be bringing the war back with us. Your galaxy will become a battlefield again, at least for a while. Many of you will die before we can stop the Devourers." Hayes stood up, and Krelvoth could see the weight of responsibility on the old admiral's shoulders. "But if you do not call us, if you try to fight the Devourers alone, you will all die anyway. They cannot be stopped with conventional weapons. We learned that the hard way, so the choice is yours. Call us and have a chance, or stay silent and face extinction. Either way, we will respect your decision. We made our choice 2,000 years ago. Now you have to make yours." The recording ended. Krelvoth and Thel Quinn looked at each other in the silence of the vault. They both knew what had to be done, but neither wanted to say it out loud. Calling the humans back meant admitting that the current galactic civilization could not protect itself. It meant bringing back a species that had transformed itself into something alien, and possibly dangerous. It meant changing everything. But outside the vault, beyond the atmosphere of Kepler 442b, beyond the safe, comfortable core worlds, the Devourers were coming. And nothing the Council had tried was working. The Council rejected their recommendation. Krelvoth and Thel Quinn presented all their evidence, showed them Admiral Hayes's recording, explained the activation sequence and what it could do. They begged the council to at least consider using it as a last resort. The answer was still no. The council's reasoning was simple and in a way understandable. They did not trust anything they did not understand. The idea of humans who had turned themselves into quantum beings, who existed outside normal space and time, who had been watching the galaxy for 2,000 years without making contact. It was too strange, too frightening. What if the humans came back and decided they wanted to rule the galaxy themselves? What if the transformation had driven them insane? What if calling them back made things worse instead of better? Better to keep fighting with their own fleets, their own weapons, their own strategies. Better to die as themselves than to be saved by ghosts. Krelvoth returned to his homeworld of Xanthera Prime feeling defeated and frustrated. He had found the answer to one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries, had discovered a potential weapon against an unstoppable enemy, and no one would listen to him. The only thing he could do was continue his research, continue documenting everything he learned about the final protocol, and hope that someday the evidence would be enough to change minds. That hope died 3 months later when the Devourers entered the Xanthara system. The warning came in the middle of the night. Krelvoth woke to sirens and emergency broadcasts telling everyone to evacuate immediately. He ran to his window and looked up at the sky. He could see them even from the ground, dark shapes that blotted out the stars, moving with terrible purpose toward his world. The Xanthari defense fleet was already engaging them, bright flashes of weapons fire lighting up the night sky. It looked impressive, looked like they might have a chance. But Krelvoth had read the reports from other systems. He knew what was coming. The Devourers would adapt to the weapons, would learn from each attack, would grow stronger with every ship they consumed. The defense fleet would hold for maybe a day, maybe 2, then it would be over. He went to his computer and downloaded everything he had on the final protocol onto a portable drive. If he was going to die, at least his research would survive. Maybe someone else would find it, would understand its importance, would use it when the council finally realized they had no other choice. But as he packed his few belongings, as he prepared to join the masses of people fleeing toward the evacuation centers, Krelvoth realized something. He did not need the council's permission. Admiral Hayes had not said the request had to come from a government or an official body. He had said it had to come from a non-human species, someone who willingly asked for help. Krelvoth was non-human. He was willing to ask. That was enough. He abandoned his apartment and ran not toward the evacuation centers but toward the university where he worked. The university had a quantum communications array, used for scientific research and long-distance communication. It was one of the most powerful transmitters on the planet. If he could reach it, if he could input the sequence that Admiral Hayes had shown him, he could broadcast it on all quantum frequencies just like the instructions said. The streets were chaos. People running in every direction. Emergency vehicles trying to move through crowds, buildings shaking as defense satellites fell from orbit and crashed into the city. Krelvoth pushed through it all, his 6 legs giving him stability that the panicking bipeds around him lacked. The university was mostly empty. The students and professors had already fled, but the building was still powered, still functional. Krelvoth made his way to the communications lab on the 7th floor, breaking a window to get in when he found the door locked. The quantum array was still active, still connected to the planetary network. Krelvoth pulled up the sequence from his portable drive and stared at it for a long moment. This was it. This was the moment where he either saved his world or doomed it to something worse than the Devourers. He thought about Admiral Hayes, about Dr. Nathan Cross, about Helen Price and Lisa Grant and all the billions of humans who had made the choice to transform themselves. They had been scared too. They had doubts too, but they had decided that protecting life was worth any price, even the price of their own humanity. Krelvoth input the sequence and set the array to broadcast on all quantum frequencies at maximum power. Then he pressed the activation button. Nothing happened at first. The array hummed and glowed, sending out signals that Krelvoth could not see or hear, signals that traveled through dimensions he could not imagine. He watched the monitors, hoping for some sign that it had worked, that someone or something had heard his call. Outside, the battle was going badly. The defense fleet was down to half strength. The Devourers had broken through the outer orbital defenses and were beginning their approach to the planet's surface. Krelvoth could hear explosions in the distance, could feel the building shake as debris from destroyed ships rained down on the city. He kept watching the monitors, kept hoping. kept praying to gods he did not really believe in. Then, exactly 17 minutes after he activated the sequence, space itself began to tear. It started small, just little rips in the fabric of reality, visible as bright lines against the darkness of space. But the rips grew quickly, spreading like cracks in glass, opening wider and wider until Krelvoth could see something behind them, something that glowed with a light that hurt to look at. Ships came through the rips, ships that looked human in design but wrong somehow, like they were not entirely there, like they existed in multiple dimensions at once. They glowed with the same painful light that filled the dimensional tiers, and they moved in ways that violated the laws of physics that Krelvoth understood. There were hundreds of them, then thousands. They kept coming through the tiers, kept filling the space around Zenthera Prime, kept positioning themselves between the planet and the approaching devourers. One ship was larger than the others, a massive vessel that seemed to be the center of the formation. Krelvoth's computer identified it after a moment, matching its design to old human records. It was the EDS Infinity, flagship of the United Human Fleet, the ship that Admiral Jack Hayes had commanded during the war against the Devourers. A communication signal came through the quantum array, and Krelvoth nearly fell over in shock when he heard a voice speaking in his language. It was Admiral Hayes, or something that had once been Admiral Hayes, speaking with a voice that seemed to come from thousands of throats at once. "We heard your call," the voice said. "We are here. Get your people to safety. This will not be pleasant to watch." The Devourers had noticed the human ships now. They changed course, abandoning their approach to the planet and moving to engage this new threat. They outnumbered the human fleet 5-1, and they had adapted to countless weapons over the centuries. They were confident as much as mindless machines could be confident. That confidence lasted exactly 30 seconds. The human ships moved like a single organism, like they were all controlled by one mind. They probably were, Krelvoth realized. The final protocol had not just changed individual humans into quantum beings. It had connected them all together into one vast distributed intelligence. They were not thousands of ships with thousands of crews. They were one entity with thousands of bodies. The weapons the humans used did not exist in normal space. Krelvoth's sensors could not even detect them properly, could only show the effects as Devourer ships simply stopped existing, erased from reality by attacks that came from dimensions he could not perceive. The Devourers tried to adapt, tried to learn from the attacks like they always did, but there was nothing to learn. The humans were not using technology in any conventional sense. They were using their very existence as a weapon, reaching across dimensional boundaries to unmake their enemies at a fundamental level. In less than an hour, every Devourer ship in the Zenthera system was destroyed. The human fleet did not slow down, did not stop to rest. They immediately began spreading out, moving toward other systems where the Devourers were active, continuing their mission of protection that they had started 2,000 years ago. But the EDS Infinity stayed behind. It moved into orbit around Zenthera Prime, and Admiral Hayes' voice came through the quantum array again. "We need to talk," he said. "You deserve to know what you have called back into your galaxy." A shuttle launched from the Infinity, a small craft that glowed with the same dimensional light as the larger ships. It landed on the university's roof right above the communications lab where Krelvoth waited. He climbed the stairs to the roof, his legs shaking with exhaustion and fear and something that might have been hope. The shuttle's door opened and a figure stepped out. It looked human, more or less. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with familiar features that Krelvoth recognized from the old recordings as Admiral Jack Hayes. But the figure glowed from within, its body appearing solid one moment and translucent the next, like it could not quite decide whether to be physical or pure energy. Hayes walked toward Krelvoth, and the scientist noticed that the Admiral's feet did not quite touch the ground. He was floating just slightly, held up by forces that had nothing to do with gravity. Admiral Hayes stopped a few meters away from Krelvoth, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The scientist studied the being in front of him, trying to reconcile what he saw with what he knew about humans. Hayes looked solid enough, but there was something not quite right about him. His edges seemed to blur and refocus constantly, like reality could not quite pin him down to one state of being. "You are afraid," Hayes said, and his voice was different now, quieter, more human. "That is good. You should be afraid. We are not what we were." Krelvoth found his voice with difficulty. Are you still human? He asked. Hayes smiled, and the expression was sad and strange on his glowing face. That is a complicated question. We remember being human. We remember individual lives, individual thoughts, individual dreams. But we also experience existence very differently now. All 15 billion of us are connected, sharing thoughts and perceptions across dimensional barriers. I am Jack Hayes, but I am also Dr. Nathan Cross and Lisa Grant and Helen Price and billions of others. We are individuals, and we are one thing at the same time. He gestured toward the city below, where fires were burning and emergency crews were working to rescue people from collapsed buildings. We felt your call across 2,000 years and multiple dimensions. We felt your fear, your desperation, your hope. Every human that ever lived felt it at the same moment. And we all agreed, just like we agreed to the final protocol in the first place, that we would answer. The Devourers, Krelvoth said. Your recording said you destroyed them. But they came back. We destroyed the main swarm, Hayes agreed. The central intelligence that controlled billions of Devourer units across hundreds of dimensions. But the Devourers are like a virus. Individual cells can survive even when the main body dies. Those cells went dormant, scattered across the dark spaces between galaxies. We knew they were there. We have been watching them for 2,000 years, making sure they did not wake up and grow strong again. But they did wake up. Hayes nodded slowly. Yes. 300 years ago, a few Devourer cells found each other in the void and began to rebuild. We watched them, waiting to see if they would become a real threat or if they would destroy themselves fighting over resources. We do not interfere unless we have to. That is one of our rules. We protect life, but we do not rule it. We do not make choices for other species. So you let them grow, Krelvoth said, feeling a flash of anger. You watched them get strong enough to kill billions of people, and you did nothing. We were waiting for someone to ask for help, Hayes said gently. The final protocol is not just about fighting the Devourers. It is about respecting the freedom of other species to choose their own path. If we intervened every time something dangerous appeared in the galaxy, we would be tyrants, not protectors. We would be making ourselves the rulers of all life, deciding what threats are acceptable and what threats must be destroyed. That is not what we wanted to become. He moved closer to Krelvoth, and the scientist could feel warmth radiating from the glowing figure. You asked for help. You made the choice for your species to accept our intervention. That is what we were waiting for. That is why we are here now. Around them, more human ships were appearing in the sky, tearing through dimensional barriers to join the fleet in orbit. Krelvoth watched them and tried to count. But there were too many, and more kept arriving every minute. How many of you are there? He asked. All of us, Hayes said. Every human who was alive when the final protocol activated. Every consciousness that agreed to the transformation. 15 billion minds connected and coordinated, controlling approximately 8 million ships and stations across multiple dimensions. We are the largest distributed intelligence in the known universe. We are also the loneliest. Krelvoth heard something in Hayes' voice then, something that made him understand the true cost of what the humans had done. They had saved the galaxy, but they had lost everything that made life worth living. No families, because they were all one family now. No privacy, because they shared every thought. No death, because they existed outside normal time. No growth, no change, no surprise, no discovery. Just an eternal vigil, watching and waiting for the next time they were needed. I am sorry, Krelvoth said quietly. I am sorry we made you come back. I am sorry you had to sacrifice so much. Hayes laughed, and the sound was surprisingly human, surprisingly warm. Do not be sorry. We chose this. We would choose it again. Yes, we lost things. Yes, we exist in a state that would probably drive our old selves insane if they could see it. But we also gained something precious. We have purpose. We have meaning. We protect life in the galaxy. That is worth any price. He turned to look at the city, at the fires being put out, at the people emerging from shelters to see if their homes still stood. Every life we save justifies what we became. Every species that survives because we are watching justifies the choice we made. We are not dead, Krelvoth. We are not gone. We are just different. And different is not always worse. Over the next few days, Krelvoth watched as the human fleet systematically destroyed every Devourer presence in the galaxy. They moved faster than normal ships, appearing in multiple places at once, coordinating attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously. The Devourers never had a chance. They had evolved to fight conventional threats, to adapt to weapons and tactics they could understand. They had no defense against an enemy that existed partially outside reality, that could attack from dimensions they could not perceive. The battles were brief and decisive. Human ships would appear, devourer forces would be destroyed, and the humans would move on to the next system. They did not stop to celebrate victories or mourn losses. They simply continued their work with mechanical efficiency that somehow remained deeply human in its dedication to protecting life. But Krelvoth noticed something else happening too. Wherever the human fleet went, they helped with rescue operations. They evacuated people from dying worlds. They used their advanced technology to repair damaged stations and ships. They shared medical knowledge that saved millions of lives. They did not just destroy the devourers. They actively worked to minimize the damage the devourers had caused. Lisa Grant came to Zenthera Prime to help coordinate the planetary recovery. Like Hayes, she appeared mostly human, glowing with internal light existing in that strange state between physical and energy. She worked with the Zenthari government to organize reconstruction efforts, using human computational power to solve logistical problems that would have taken years to figure out otherwise. Krelvoth met with her several times, asking questions about the final protocol, about what it felt like to exist as a quantum being, about what the humans had experienced during their 2,000 years of waiting. She answered patiently, describing an existence that Krelvoth could barely imagine. "We exist in many places at once," she explained. "I am here talking to you, but I am also helping with evacuation efforts in the Carthene system, and I am fighting devourers near the Galactic Rim, and I am maintaining the dimensional barriers that keep worse things from entering our universe. All of that is happening simultaneously, and I experience all of it as one continuous present moment." "Does it hurt?" Krelvoth asked. Lisa thought about that for a moment. "Not physically. We do not have physical bodies in the way we used to. But emotionally, yes, sometimes it hurts. We remember what we lost. We remember what it felt like to be individuals, to have moments of privacy and solitude. We remember falling in love, raising children, growing old. We gave up all of that. But we also remember why we gave it up. We remember the people we saved, the civilizations we protected. That memory makes the pain bearable." She looked at Krelvoth with eyes that seemed to see right through him. "You carry guilt for calling us back. I can see it in the way you hold yourself, in the questions you ask. You think you forced us into something we did not want to do. But Krelvoth, you gave us exactly what we wanted. You gave us purpose again. For 2,000 years we have been watching, unable to act, hoping that we would never be needed, but also hoping that if we were needed, someone would have the courage to call us. You had that courage. Thank you." The final Devourer stronghold was located in the dark space between galaxies, in a region so remote that no conventional ship could reach it in less than a century. The humans went there without hesitation, tearing open dimensional portals that let them cross impossible distances in moments. Krelvoth watched the battle through quantum sensors that Hayes had given him. It was not really a battle, more like an execution. The Devourers had built a massive structure in the void, a construction that existed in 7 dimensions and was designed to birth new Devourer units continuously. The humans surrounded it, cut it off from every dimension it touched, and then systematically dismantled it piece by piece until nothing remained. When it was over, when every Devourer in the galaxy had been destroyed, the human fleet gathered in orbit around Earth. Krelvoth received an invitation to join them there, to witness what Hayes called the closing ceremony. The journey to Earth took 3 days, even with the advanced ship that the humans provided for Krelvoth. He spent the time reading more about human history, trying to understand the species that had saved the galaxy twice now. What he found was a story of contradictions, a species capable of both terrible violence and incredible compassion, a people who had fought countless wars among themselves, but who had always eventually chosen cooperation over conflict. Earth looked much as it had in the old records. Blue and green and white, beautiful in the light of its yellow star. But the Sol system was different now. The planets were still there, still orbiting in their ancient paths, but they were empty. No cities on Mars, no mining stations in the asteroid belt, no orbital platforms around Jupiter's moons. Everything had been preserved exactly as the humans had left it 2,000 years ago. Like a museum dedicated to a species that no longer existed in physical form. The human fleet filled the space around Earth. Thousands of glowing ships arranged in patterns that Krelvoth's computer said had mathematical significance. At the center of the formation was the EDS Infinity, Admiral Hayes's flagship, positioned directly above what had once been the city of New York. Krelvoth's ship docked with the Infinity, and he was met by Hayes himself. The Admiral led him through corridors that flickered between solidity and transparency, past rooms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Other humans were there too, or at least the quantum entities that had once been humans. They nodded to Krelvoth as he passed, their faces familiar from the historical records he had read. They emerged onto an observation deck that looked down at Earth. The view was stunning, and Krelvoth found himself understanding why the humans had loved their homeworld so much. It was not the biggest planet or the most resource-rich, but it had something special, a quality that made it feel alive in a way that other worlds did not. "Welcome to Earth," Hayes said softly, "the cradle of humanity, the world we left behind when we chose to become what we are now." Other figures joined them on the observation deck. Lisa Grant was there, still coordinating recovery efforts across the galaxy even as she stood beside Krelvoth. Dr. Nathan Cross appeared, his form flickering with equations and formulas that seemed to be part of his very being now. Helen Price stood near the window looking down at Earth with an expression of longing that made Krelvoth's heart ache. "We wanted you to see this," Hayes said. "We wanted someone from the current galaxy to witness what we do next, to understand what the final protocol really means. What are you going to do?" Krelvoth asked. "We are going back," Helen Price said, her voice barely a whisper. "Back to the space between dimensions, back to our eternal watch. The Devourers are destroyed, but we know they are not the only threat out there. There are other things in the darkness, other dangers that sleep in the spaces where normal matter cannot exist. We will continue to guard against them. We will continue to protect the galaxy, even if no one knows we are doing it. But first," Dr. Cross added, "we wanted to come home one last time. We wanted to see Earth again, to remember what we were fighting for." The human ships began to pulse with light, all of them in perfect synchronization. The light grew brighter and brighter, until Krelvoth had to shield his eyes. When he could see again, something had changed. The ships were still there, but they seemed more real somehow, more solid. And he could see figures inside them now. Millions of figures, each one glowing with their own light. "We are letting ourselves be visible," Hayes explained.
"Normally we exist in a state that your eyes cannot perceive, even with the changes we made to partially manifest in normal space.
But right now, just for this moment, we are making ourselves as real as we can be. We are letting you see all 15 billion of us all at once." Krelvoth looked out at the fleet and felt tears forming in his eyes. He could see them now, all the humans who had ever agreed to the final protocol. Children and adults, scientists and soldiers, leaders and ordinary people. Each one was an individual, with their own face and their own light. But they were also connected, part of something larger than themselves. They began to sing. All 15 billion of them. Their voices combining into a harmony that should have been impossible, that transcended the normal limits of sound and space. The song had no words, just pure emotion expressed through sound that resonated across dimensions. It was a song of loss and sacrifice, of hope and determination, of love for the galaxy they had chosen to protect. Krelvoth listened and felt something break open inside him. He understood now, truly understood what the humans had done. They had not just sacrificed their physical existence. They had sacrificed their future, their potential, everything they could have become as individuals. They had frozen themselves in a moment of choice, dedicating eternity to a single purpose, and they did not regret it. He could hear that in their song. They did not regret the choice, did not regret the sacrifice. They had become something greater than human, something that would exist as long as the galaxy needed protection, and they were proud of that. The song ended, and the fleet began to fade. Not disappearing, but becoming less visible, retreating back into the dimensions where they normally existed. Hayes turned to Krelvoth one last time, his glowing form already becoming transparent. "You asked if we are still human," the Admiral said. "The answer is yes and no. We are not the humans we used to be. We are something new, something that has no name in any language. But we carry humanity with us in everything we do. Our compassion, our stubbornness, our refusal to give up, even when the situation seems hopeless. Those things are still human, even if our bodies are not. Will you ever come back? Krelvoth asked. Will you ever be able to become physical again? To live in the galaxy instead of just watching over it? Hayes smiled. We do not know. The final protocol was designed to be permanent. But we are learning new things all the time, discovering capabilities we did not know we had. Maybe someday we will find a way to reverse the process to become individuals again, without losing our ability to protect the galaxy. But even if we do not, we are content. We have a purpose. We have each other. That is enough. He started to fade completely, his form becoming nothing more than a shimmer in the air. But his final words came through clearly, spoken with all the authority of someone who had made the hardest choice possible and never looked back. Tell your people, tell the council, tell everyone in the galaxy. Humanity is not gone. We are still here, still watching, still protecting. You cannot see us, but we are in every shadow between the stars, in every quantum fluctuation, in every dimension that touches yours. When darkness threatens, when extinction comes calling, call out to us. Use the sequence. We will hear you. We will come. That is our promise. That is the final protocol. Then he was gone and the whole fleet with him. The space around Earth was empty again, quiet again. But Krelvoth knew it was not truly empty. Somewhere in the dimensions he could not see, 15 billion human consciousnesses were taking up their eternal vigil once more, watching and waiting for the next time they would be needed. Krelvoth returned to Zenthera Prime a different person than he had been when he left. The council called him to testify about what he had seen, what he had learned. He told them everything, showed them the recordings he had made, explained the nature of the final protocol and what the humans had become. This time they listened. The evidence was undeniable. The Devourers were gone, destroyed by an enemy they could not fight or understand, and that enemy was humanity, transformed and eternal, dedicated to protecting life in the galaxy. The council voted to officially thank the humans for their intervention, even though no one knew if the humans could hear them or cared about official recognition. They also voted to preserve the human archives and ruins as protected sites, places where future generations could learn about the species that had made the ultimate sacrifice for the good of all. Krelvoth was appointed as the official keeper of human history, responsible for maintaining the archives and researching the final protocol. It was a position he accepted with pride and humility. He spent the rest of his life studying what the humans had done, trying to understand the transformation they had undergone, hoping to find answers to questions that might not have answers. He never activated the sequence again. Never needed to. The galaxy remained peaceful, protected by guardians that no one could see but everyone now knew existed. Sometimes, late at night, Krelvoth would look up at the stars and wonder if the humans were watching him at that moment, if they knew how grateful he was for what they had done. He liked to think they did. He liked to think that somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, Admiral Hayes and Dr. Cross and Lisa Grant and Helen Price and all the billions of others were smiling, satisfied that their sacrifice had meaning, that their choice had made a difference. The final protocol was not just a weapon or a defense system. It was a promise, a commitment, a declaration that some things were worth any price. The humans had paid that price willingly, transforming themselves into eternal guardians so that other species would not have to. And in doing so, they had proven something important about intelligence and compassion, and the choices that civilizations make.